and change, and where they see their future. And so we have Hansel, who's going to be moderating, and Jerry Lynn, who's going to be moderating, and the rest of the panel, and you'll hear more about them in a little bit. Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Well, thanks for the intro there, Zubair. So, parents out there, I guess I haven't met most of you guys. I'm a long way from you guys out here, way over in Silicon Valley. I am the founder and CEO of the Coder School. We started this thing 5 and 6 years ago, something like that, and we've had a blast ever since. You know, especially when we get to meet awesome folks like Zubair out there in Long Island. I know those guys are doing very well. I hear a lot of good things about what their students are learning, what your kids out there are learning. So good job by Zubair, Noreen, Misha, and team out there. So these guys asked me to be a moderator for this TeenHacks Future Teens Leadership speaker series, something like that. See if I got the right words there. So I'm glad you guys could jump in. You know, I think a lot of the topics today is going to be about how these folks, these panelists, are sort of kicking butt. I just kind of met them just now, and they're doing very well and have a pretty amazing resume. So with that, I'm going to stop talking so much and kind of drop it to these guys to introduce themselves. I will start with Jeffrey, who is the TeenHacks founder, in fact. He'll tell you a little bit about the organization as well as himself. Jeffrey, are you there?
Hi. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. Yeah, thank you so much for the Coder School for hosting this. We're really happy to be here and excited to talk about all like what we do and well as what TeenHacks Li. So just my like quick introduction. I'm currently a rising sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania, planning to study economics. So back in 2018, I co-founded TeenHacks Li. If you haven't heard about TeenHacks Li, we are a completely student-ran 24-hour hackathon, one of the only of its kind on Long Island, and we're like really, we've been building it out and had 3 successful events, hosting over 400 people. I think over 500 people actually. So Austin and Eva, the other 2 panelists, have also been on the team. It's been a really great opportunity to build this like computer science community on Long Island, as well as like get that entrepreneurial experience, especially as a high school student. I know in high school that was like one of the only times I was able to work in an environment like TeenHacks Li, and being able to be around my peers was a really unique experience. In addition to like the computer science world, I've been involved in a lot of like different random things. In high school, I did science research with a lot of engineering and 3D printing. And then I'm also very involved in like community based like advocacy work as well.
Awesome, cool. Thanks, Jeffrey. Let's go down the line. I see Eva up there on my screen at least next. So you wanna go next, Eva?
Of course. So I'm really glad to be here. It's my honor to share my experience. And I was involved in TeenHacks Li as the director of marketing for the fall 2019 season. And I was actually also an organizer for spring 2019. Yeah. So I will be attend MIT for biological engineering and computer science in this fall. And I think 3 things that is most important to me through high school. First is scientific research, same as Jeffrey. I'm one of the 40 finalists in Regeneron Science and Research this year. It's known as the most prestigious high school senior research competitions in the nation. And also I have been done a lot of artistical stuff, which is the part I also help with TeenHacks Li. And the third thing, of course, is TeenHacks Li. And I'm really glad to be involved in the local Long Island community to promote inclusive computer science. And I'm glad to be here working with the Coder School to share my experience.
Right on. Cool. Thanks very much, Eva. Let's see. Austin is our last man up here. Are you there, Austin?
Yep, right here. So I'm Austin. First of all, nice to meet you all. Hope you're doing safe and well. So yeah, I'm a rising freshman at UC Berkeley. I'm planning on studying computer science. It's definitely something I've been really passionate over the past 4 years in high school. It's something I've really come to love, especially as it sort of intersects with the arts. I'm really passionate about art, as well as sort of, you know, the humanities, particularly debate captain in my school. So across sort of like debating, as well as like creating art, I think there's a lot of potential there to really get involved in STEM as well, so they can come together for some really cool projects. A little bit about myself. I'm a runner. if there's anyone out there who runs. And I'm really interested in entrepreneurship. Yeah. So I think sort of, where I see myself headed is I think there's definitely some place for me at the intersection of, entrepreneurship, art, computer science, especially more and more as you start to see now where there's new companies that are really diversifying and exploring where those can intersect. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where that's headed in the future, and I'm hoping to be a part of it.
Cool, awesome, well-rounded guy there. So I don't know if you guys, parents heard, I'll summarize this guys for you. I heard Berkeley, I heard MIT, and I heard Upenn. So I don't know about you guys. I have 3 kids myself, and I wouldn't mind if they followed in the footsteps of any of these folks right here. So that's why we have them on as our superstar panelists here today. So I hope these guys will give you some really good insight into how to become one of them. So the way we're going to run this is I do have a number of core sort of questions that I was just going to kind of run by them. Some of them are kind of softball. And so what we're going to look for you guys to do out there is if you have questions either along the way or at the end, either way, please feel free to use the chat widget there at the bottom of your Zoom. Feel free to just chat it in, and what we'll do is I'll either take the question as we have a break in between questions, or I'll take them at the end. But I know I've done these before where sometimes at the end I say, does anybody have questions? And it's just crickets. That's why I'm telling you guys now, if you guys have a chance to think about what questions you might have to ask these folks, that would be helpful. All right, so with that, let's dive in. I guess I will go ahead and ask the question, and one of you 3 can go ahead and jump in, or if I don't hear anything, I'll just call on one of you guys. So I'll start with a real easy softball one. What or who inspired you to learn to code, and at what age?
I guess I can jump in here. Yeah, so I think sort of probably my biggest experience where I really consider myself diving into coding was in a program I had taken at Cooper Union. The program I believe was called Computer Science for Social Good. This was over the summer. And I kind of just looked pretty cool. It was like in the city. I wanted to get that sort of like, city like summer program vibe. It was, something my friends were considering too. And so once I actually got there and started going through the program, someone who I had met, which is now one of my very close mentors, John Chin, he was a professor of that program. And so he was really leading by example in terms of how he drove his pursuit into computer science. So he's an NYU graduate. He's very well versed in being a full stack developer. And where he saw his future was in really trying to build systems where he could actually use computer science to address an issue that he saw on college campuses. So in his case, he actually noticed that, despite where we're at as a nation, it's still a very huge issue for food insecurity for college students. And he figured there has to be some sort of solution to that. So he actually built an app where you can connect students who have free, meal plan cards that are going to run out at the end of the semester, and kids who are in, dire need of food. So he saw a real niche there that could, find the solution, and he put it together. And now it's a fully sustainable company, there's staff, and he's able to make a living out of that. So I think really coming out of that summer program, more importantly than just the code itself they equipped me with, I saw a real potential for an entrepreneurship opportunity to really have an impact. And I think that's sort of what's driven me towards, things like TeenHacks a lot and my other entrepreneurial efforts. So I guess that's where I started.
Right on. Cool. I like the social theme of that. That's awesome. Eva or Jeffrey, do you guys have one?
I guess I'll drop in. So I will be honest, I'm not so great coder like Austin and Jeffrey, and I'm actually quite new to coding. I have a lot of things need to learn. So I will alter the question a little bit. I will say that actually TeenHacks LI, my involvement in TeenHacks LI and in this community that inspired me to learn how to code. So I remember I joined TeenHacks LI because of our part. And I remember the first time, so TeenHacks LI is actually my first hackathon. And I was so surprised when I was at NYIT in the hall. I see hundreds of students, mentors, they come together and they just involve in this community. They code for 24 hours just because we are connected by STEM. And also I know that with the development of information technology, coding is become more and more important and more crucial to our daily life, and especially to scientific research. For example, my project also involves in R programming, and without the programming skill, we cannot do some statistical analysis possible. So that's why I decided to take AP Computer Science A in my high school and actually learn how to code. And meanwhile, use online resources, for example, MIT OpenCourseWare, I was able to self-study Python. So I think it's really great how we can use these public resources to learn how to code. And yeah.
That's awesome. When you said MIT openware, I thought you were going to go to Scratch instead of Python, which is what we use a lot. So
yeah.
All right, cool. Jeffrey, did you want to jump in on this question?
Yeah. So I also like kind of echo the sentiment that I'm like not a super advanced coder. I feel like that's a lot of people like in the computer science world, since there's always so much more to learn, and then there's always that like imposter syndrome. But especially like going to college, you realize everyone's kind of on the same playing field. I guess like my first like really getting into computers or tech was like back in 6th grade with Minecraft and just like an obsession over a video game. I feel like a lot of people, Minecraft is a really great introduction, especially since like this is like back in the day when there was no like Xbox or like phone version. It was all on the PC. So it's like setting up your own server, like doing your own like commands, which was like not like really coding, but like has a lot of like the same like logic flows, and just learning those super basic skills. From that, I kind of like springboarded into web design and just like creating websites myself, since that like was able to create a very like tangible outcome. And then entering high school, I didn't necessarily do like a lot of like software coding, but I was really interested in 3D printers. So with 3D printing, there of course like is the software component. So throughout high school, I did a lot of coding for computational the computational aspect of 3D printing. And that was like kind of like a 2-year like research project that I did in high school. Now like in college, I've like gone like more of the like traditional route of like taking actual like classes, but like as what Eva said, like a lot of what I did in the beginning was very just like Googling, finding like YouTube tutorials, going on like random sites and learning how to code myself. And I think like especially like for me, like my high school and like my middle school didn't really start offering coding classes to like until like the recent like 3 or 4 years. So there weren't really those like set like opportunities for me to learn coding, and it was like very much self-motivated.
Yeah, and actually for any kids that happen to be out there, or even parents of the kids, that's a really great tip, is the self-motivation of going out there and really looking up something on Stack Overflow or Google or whatever. How do you code this? How do you code that? It takes a lot of willpower, and that's a lot of commitment. And for these guys to have done that is pretty amazing. Part of what we do as with our coaches, our code coaches, when we teach our kids, is we try to encourage them to learn how to learn. Because even as coders ourselves, we don't remember all the commands either. We actually look up a lot of those ourselves. So the funniest thing of what you said, Jeffrey, is you use the phrase "back in the day." You're only a freshman, and we're already going back in the day. So I'm gonna go on that theme and ask one of these questions. So back in the day, I suppose let's say in your middle school year. So that was a little bit a while ago. Was there any sort of inkling of wanting to get into STEM or engineering quite yet? I know, Austin, I think you said was a 6th grade that you were already starting it, but I don't know if you guys back in the middle school, were you guys thinking of engineering at that point?
I guess I can start. Like, I feel like my parents always like, oh, want me to be a like doctor or like going into like the science field, like your typical parent. So I feel like I was always on that like STEM route. Like throughout high school, like took like all the AP like science courses, was very much along that just like field that you are kind of expected to take as a like STEM student. I'd say, especially with more of like the engineering side, just because my school didn't have a lot of those resources, that was much more self-motivated. So like there was, I don't think it actually, it didn't run this year, but Maker Faire was one of the places that I really got interested in the like tinkering, engineering kind of just like field of just like tinkering. Like, so Maker Faire is this like really huge convention at the New York Hall of Science that runs every year, and they show off all different types of technology. That's like what the first year I went, I think it was like 3D printing themed. So there was like a million 3D printers. There's like 3D printers like the size of houses printing huge objects. And then from that, I kind of like was where I entered like 3D printing. And then from that was like all of my different engineering fields that I've just like gotten a chance to like tinker with throughout my years.
Hey, Jeffrey, I have a question for you. When you talk about tinkering, what kind of insight? I mean, I know a lot of our students at the Coder School like to tinker on their own. What would be 3 ideas that you have for them in terms of pursuing tinkering, right? Because part of it is self-motivated. Successful people typically don't need the confines or a structure. So, and I'll open it up to anyone, what you can share, because I think a lot of our students are kind of in the same place. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess like one of the like my favorite platforms to tinker with is Arduino. Getting into that like ecosphere of different Arduino parts is a really is something that I got into in the beginning of high school, and it's all open source. So buying all the components is like super cheap, just like off Amazon. So didn't have to have like my parents dish out hundreds of dollars to like buy me a like set that I know like a lot of schools are like using more, especially like I know a lot of schools are now using like Vex Robotics, which is like a like really great platform to work with, but like I just didn't have the resources for that. So like just kind of doing my own research and like finding those components to tinker with. And especially I really liked Arduino because it is like a hardware aspect. So you can like plug it into your computer, write some code, do some like very simple wiring, and then like make LEDs blink, make motors, and then as you learn the different components, you can like pile up and make cars, make robots, and it's really easy to go from like something that is entry level to something that is like sophisticated and like very impressive and is like very fulfilling to actually see an end product. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks. Yeah. I love that sort of tinkering mentality, and that's how a lot of kids end up getting into this stuff. And so I guess speaking of kids, there's a lot of sort of maybe even elementary level kids here. If you guys were to meet one of these folks and they said to you, Eva, I would maybe like to code. You know, what advice would you give an elementary school kid who is thinking about potentially being a coder when they grow up?
That's a pretty good question. So when I was in elementary school, I don't have all these resources. And at that point, actually, computers is also quite new to me and my family members. But now we all have these local resources. Like in my age of like in elementary school, we don't have like coder school in our community to actually learn how to code. So I think also we mentioned the Scratch programming before. It's a really well-designed programming language for kids that you actually don't have to know how to type all these things. You can just play around the blocks and to do a small program. So one advice I can give is to never be afraid to ask for help. Like your teachers, anyone, your friends, your parents, your teacher at school, you can always ask them for help. And also be a self-driving person. You can use your online resources wisely. And as I mentioned, MIT OpenCourseWare, maybe it's 2 events for elementary high schooler, but you can always give it a shot. And I think there are many organizations like Hack Club. They also do many great job for high school things, but I believe they also have open sources to teach coding online. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So following on that, so let's go jump over to Austin then. So when you were, you know, let's say this elementary school kid eventually gets into high school, are there particular clubs or curriculums in that high school when you were going to high school that you would recommend participating in if they wanted to follow not just coding but maybe any other, you know, engineering path?
Yeah. So just sort of batting off what Eva was saying as well in terms of like diving in, really exploring like the problem solving aspect of it. So in my case, like I wasn't like super big on like the hardware scene. I wasn't, you know, I'm not the most dexter. Yeah. So, you know, I loved like problem solving. I think especially if I was to meet this, you know, elementary school kid, I think one of the biggest things I want to emphasize is don't undermine your ability to really dive in and problem solve. Because I think, like, if you look towards the best computer scientists, it's not that they know the language itself really well. I think, oftentimes you might emphasize too much in the language. That's sort of just the medium, but really getting into that mindset of, solving puzzles and like really finding the solutions. So, even if you're in 5th or 6th grade and you go on Lightbot or you go on Hour of Code and see some of these games, that's the real skills. You are coding when you're doing that and really trying to explore the thought process. Because, even whatever language is out there right now, it's going to change. I can guarantee it 10 years from now, but that problem solving mentality is definitely what's going to persist. So if you want to be an engineer and you're in, high school right now, it doesn't have to just be robotics. I had a ton of friends who loved it and they were in it. But in my case, like, I felt like I was being an engineer when I was in debate club and I was, navigating the problem solving skills inside in rounds inside a rebuttal. Or I felt like I was an engineer when I was in the programming club, because just as much I was, trying to create an app in that sort of realm in computer science. So I think if you want to be an engineer in sort of, that definition, it can really expand to however you want to see yourself exploring different problems you want to address and how you go about that and really solving those puzzles, because ultimately that's sort of what builds a really strong computer scientist.
Nice way to hook in the whole debate thing, man. That's part of our philosophy too. Is we feel like coding is not just coding; it's about problem solving, and really, it's beneficial for everybody, debaters, doctors, lawyers, anybody. So, awesome. All right, so this next question is I guess kind of for all three of you guys. Tell us all about any mentors that you might have had to get you to where you are, how you might have met them, or if you can explain even how you can go about finding one.
I think I definitely have something to say about that with my experience in scientific research. So I was lucky enough, I'm attending Brown High School Science, which is a STEM high school, as you can tell from its name. So our school actually, everyone need to take a research class in their freshman year. It's a 1 semester class. And after that, you can get to choose if you want to be involved in a 3-year research program. So in able to find a mentor, the school is not gonna take care of this. You need to be more self-driving. You have to look for a mentor yourself. And so the way I did, and also the way most people do, is to cold email professor in the university. So I actually wrote around like 35-ish cold emails, and I eventually reached to my mentor at Columbia University, Peter and Fado. So I think one thing I can say about that is to never be afraid to reach out to other people for help. I think so during the process, I met some mentors saying, sorry, I cannot take high schoolers. Sorry, I think we are not taking any person to the lab now. But they are mostly really, really kind, and they will give you advice. They may even introduce you to another professor. So, because there's one thing really important about science, is about sharing. It's not your own property. So I think that not just professors in the university, but like also high school teachers, they're always glad to share their resources. And what you need to do is to know how to take the opportunity and just work it till the end and just never give up, I guess.
Yeah, right on. It's a great sort of this mind share mentality, with that coders have, especially, when they do like open source software and things like that, and they work together to create something for the common good. So that's awesome. Austin and Jeffrey, any mentoring stories?
Yeah, so just to add on to what Eva was saying, I really can't stress enough, like, don't be afraid to, shoot your shot, if you will. I think some of the greatest opportunities I found in terms of meeting some of my mentors that I know today is I'm really trying to, just send out like mass cold emails, any companies I could find that, they were looking for some help there. And I think what's really cool is you can sort of, as you go along your journey, find what you're strong at. If you find that, you become really good at website making or website developing, right? So I reached out to this one company who is a blockchain firm, right? I had no clue what blockchain was in the slightest, but I knew how to make a React site, and they needed some help on their front end to really build that up. So I shot out a cold email. I said, hey, I'm pretty familiar with React, and I actually learned it from that previous summer program I was talking about. And so I said, hey, I can probably help out on the front end of your site. And so luckily enough, they're willing to take me on. And then from there, sort of where I started to meet some of my mentors, because I think the more I started to show that I was capable on the front end side, they were starting to teach me more on the back end. So I starting to explore there. So I think in terms of, really finding those mentors, really showing, your strengths and how you can be a strong suit in a team or a company, that kind of sense, and reach out, and show that you're being proactive, there's going to be people that are definitely willing to help you out and sort of build on your journey. I think in general, because, whatever you're doing, you definitely can't do it alone. As Eva was saying too, it's the network effect. Whether you want to make the next AI model or the next brand new video game, I can guarantee you're going to need, team members along the way to help you. So definitely putting yourself out there and willing to work with others is super important.
Yeah, right on. Sometimes we're afraid to put ourselves out there, afraid that we'll get rejected or whatnot. But the only way to get yourself out there is to do it. I actually, my nephew, I was telling Jeffrey earlier, my nephew actually goes to Upenn in the same grade same year as Jeffrey. He, when he was a junior, he was sending out these random emails, and he actually got a hold of Brad Smith. I don't know if anybody knows who that is. He is the CEO of Intuit. And the CEO of Intuit actually responded to his email, and he said, "Hey, if you're ever out in Silicon Valley, let's have lunch." So he actually had lunch with Brad Smith just out of this random email he shot him. So it works, guys. You just have to, kind of get the nerve up to write a good email, and probably write like 10,000 of them and go for the volume.
I was just going to build on what you're saying, Hansel, because I think it's so important to be fearless, and it's so important to be courageous, right? In terms of that. And the only thing that's holding people back sometimes is hitting send.
Yeah.
So I would put that out there for people that are in middle school and people that are in high school. And Jeffrey, I was going to ask you a little different question in terms of having a mentor. How did they help cultivate you in terms of help? It's a process, right, of confidence building, of helping provide you with direction. Maybe that would be helpful, because I think it's really important that people find people to partner with and help them on their journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say definitely like one of my biggest mentors was the computer science teacher at my high school, Mr. C. I never actually had him as a teacher, but he was the club advisor for the code club at my high school that I was really involved with. So he really helped cultivate like kind of my love for like entrepreneurship and just like expanding out with the club by like acting as a resource. Like especially I know like in middle school and high school, it is like there's a lot of restrictions on everything, and it's very hard to actually feel like you can make a difference. But Mr. C was really helpful in like navigating administration. If like we held a like small 12-hour hackathon at our high school, and just like going through all of the logistical and like administrative planning is something that a student typically isn't able to do. But Mr. C wanted to help and wanted to help like the club, me, as well as like all the other students. And I think that is like a really great aspect of having a mentor that kind of believes in you and is willing to just like kind of fight for you, be your advocate, especially in a world of like all of these adults. It's kind of hard to navigate as a child, since, well, not a child, but like as a teenager, because it's like, oh, like what is this team gonna do? And I think like TeenHacks is like a really great example of like these, like everyone here is like well, like everyone in TeenHacks is like 18 or younger, and they're able to host like over 300 people at an event, something that like you typically would never see with just high schoolers or middle schoolers at all.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's awesome that you guys have so many mentors as well. I don't remember having mentors like that when I was in high school, and that's probably why I didn't get into UPenn or Berkeley or these other schools. So, all right, so next question. So we are in kind of a new normal type of time. Where, you know, as you guys can see, we're all kind of calling in from home. I'm calling in from a fake background coder school here, but we're all calling in from our separate places. Do you folks have any advice on what you can share with students on how to best use this time to, well, to either learn or not learn, whatever you think is best? How do you guys, what advice do you have for this time period? Any of you three?
I think in my case, definitely sort of the biggest way I've really been trying to keep myself busy and connecting with others is sort of what started through TeenHacks. So the way our hackathon works is we have a physical sponsorship, which is called Hack Club. And Hack Club is sort of this really cool organization. It's pretty much comprised of 6,000 coders across the world. So we have all across 50 states, you have Egypt, India, and all these high schoolers too. It's fully, you know, student run. coming together and, you know, kind of working together in little side projects here and there. So on that Slack channel, on the Hack Club Slack, I'm beginning to meet like a ton of new people that I'd never met before. And now with all this new time, especially, you know, with school being a little bit lighter now, I can really invest myself in that community. And I think more than ever, I'm meeting a lot more people, even while I'm stuck at home. And so in that time, I think, you know, especially now you're going to see a lot more of these like online communities rising up in this time, particularly for students, because I know now maybe students aren't getting as many resources from their school during this sort of like online virtual time. So there's definitely a real need for it, and you're starting to see it come up. So definitely, you know, really trying to join those communities and see who you find online. At least in my experience, I know I've been diving a lot more in like the open source community because everyone's kind of building projects on there, and it's, you know, it's very easy and welcoming to sort of like jump on. You know, if you have a certain skill that you can add, they're always looking to, you know, look for an extra hand. I think it's really cool to find those communities and meet new people.
That's awesome. I feel like you're like a total social butterfly in real life here. A little bit of an extrovert, maybe.
A little bit.
All right. So, Jeffrey, any advice for the new normal here?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like a really great opportunity to kind of just like learn some new skills. I think like personally, so it's like in college now I'm studying economics, so just kind of reading up on different markets. It's like I was able
to actually... time to buy or sell, man.
So yeah, like done some just playing around in the stock market, but I think it's a really great opportunity if like you want to get learn how to code, if you want to like learn how to use like Photoshop. My college is like offering Photoshop till May 31st, so I don't have it for too much longer, but just learning how to use different software, and the resources online are just so plentiful now. I think it's super easy for anyone to really learn. And just like echoing the thought of like those online communities that Austin was talking about is super valuable. It's like you can find community like basically anywhere now, either like in like on Facebook, on like Slack communities, through like just Reddit and like other social medias. I know like I've been able to meet people like all throughout the world, just like helping on random things, just asking around, and I feel like everyone's home now. So like, what else are they going to do? Everyone wants to meet other people, and it is a really great time to just learn anything you really want to learn.
Yeah. I mean, it's so easy to just sort of sit at home and watch TV all day, Netflix and stream it all day. But you're right. This is an opportunity. It's not to be squandered. You know, we are all at home, but that gives us a lot of opportunity to learn new things. Eva, how about you? Any advice right there?
So I completely agree. So we mentioned maybe get in touch, do more networking. We also mentioned maybe find a new hobby, learn a new skill, because we have all these resources. I think one thing really important is overall just to stay curious. Stay curious about your environment. Stay curious about new things. You can always learn. So I think besides all these, maybe we don't have to be so professional 24/7. And especially during this special time period, it's really important to relax, and most importantly, to know how to have fun. So I think it's completely okay if you are working Netflix or you are just picking up a new programming language. I think either way, just make yourself comfortable, and yeah.
I have a question. Are any of you thinking about Zoom was used extensively in the enterprise environment. So now March hits and suddenly Zoom is top of mind. Are any of you guys looking at any tools as a competitor to Zoom? Thinking about it?
So one thing, so since TeenHacks, the members all live across in New York, and we also have people from Pennsylvania. So we are doing most of things online. And there's one thing we're using is Google Hangout, Google Meet. And that's also one tool that is really useful. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and it's really cool, just to put a little plug in for engineering and software in general. I mean, if you guys think about it, the only reason that we're able to do all these things that we're able to do is because of software. You know, these people at Zoom and Google and whatnot, we're able to make these Zoom conference things and able to get on here virtually without, the risk of getting each other sick. So it's amazing how technology, and especially coding software, really impacts the world like that. Okay, so let's see, what other question do we have here? So I'm going to give you guys a curveball, and you guys can pretend you're interviewing for your first job, because sometimes they ask this at job. What would you say was the greatest failure that you have had so far that has impacted who you are? I'll give you a second to think about that one.
I also just threw up a poll, so if anyone so chooses, please put your answers in, and we'd love to see who's on the webinar. So
cool, Austin, I see your face up. Are you ready to answer this
Yeah.
failure question? Ready
Yeah.
to get the job? I'll see if you pass.
Yeah, so my biggest failure. So I think in my case, it was sort of, it was this idea that I had to sort of like really spin off of. And this is kind of nice chronologically because it comes after that blockchain internship I was working at. So the blockchain internship was at Bushwick, Brooklyn. And so if you haven't been to Bushwick, unfortunately, it's not the most like technologically adept community. There's still a pretty large divide between the general community members, between them and the actual blockchain firms themselves. There's some tension there. So I thought, me and my ambitious ways, you know, so I was sitting in the blockchain firm, and I thought every day I come to work, I go into the office, and I'm building a tool that's going to be used, you know, miles away, you know, some other state or some other country, but it doesn't seem like it's having really strong impact in the actual committee it's residing in. And the same place it's using that real estate to have that office, it doesn't seem like it's having a strong impact enough. And so just some background on blockchain, it's pretty much a digital distributed ledger. So what that all jargon means is it's pretty much, imagine this network that sits in the clouds, if you will, and it's completely open and authentic, so you can ensure that everything is trustworthy and reliable information. So the way I sort of saw that playing a role in the community itself is I figured, what if we can have this decentralized organization for the community itself? You know, it sounds like a pretty cool idea, where instead of having, you know, the traditional political community small business boards where you have 4 or 5 permanent seats that are constantly picking where all the money goes, what if you could have this, like, you know, this decentralized org where everyone sort of votes on the blockchain for, you know, where should we spend those $10,000 on? Should it go towards the new park? Should it go towards cleaning up, you know, the spray paint that was on the wall, right? So I figured I would go out there. I did all the dev. I started linking up with some of their interns. I said, hey, let's get this going. And, you know, I tried really building out this decentralized organization. And so I think one of the biggest things I learned there is when you're going about one of these computer science projects, you have to consider the community implications of it as well, because the code was super sound. It was pristine. I was getting all the help from all the mentors I was meeting, and it was really strong, right? It was definitely robust in terms of system-wise, as blockchain tends to be. But when it came to execution, you know, I had the big day. You know, I had a kickoff event. I started putting posters in all the subways so they could see it and they come to the kickoff event. And I decorated the office on the ground floor. They let us borrow it, and I'm super excited for it, right? And then, you know, I open up the doors. It's time for open day where we sort of bring up the big execution, and there's like maybe 6 people that show up max. And this entire community, I put up like, you know, 20 posters everywhere. I'm sure everyone will come, but, you know, surely enough, it was a very low turnout. And not even just the turnout itself. I think what's really valuable is the people that are actually there. Once I sort of gave my presentation, what I thought was the perfect solution, it was definitely not really adhering towards their perspective, because for me, I was super used to all this blockchain. I use it every day in the internship, but I wasn't considering the fact that this is a brand new technology. They've never used it before. So how are they supposed to now suddenly come in and, you know, make use of this? And so I really learned what I took away from that is, yes, that like app, that big project I had may have been like technically a failure, if you will, right? But I think what I learned is making sure going forward to the next projects I build or whatever sort of endeavors I go after, always considering the end user at heart, and that should be the end goal. So I think where I was coming from it, I was considering the operating system first, and I was sort of forcing that technology onto the solution. But I think what you should think about in terms of, you know, whatever projects you go forward with, let the technique, let the operating system come naturally out of what problem you're trying to solve. So I should have started ground roots from the people first. I should have, you know, really approached them and said, hey, if you wanted a tool, what do you think it should look like? And I think if I would have started there, I might have seen some better success. And I think while that event itself was a complete flop, it was definitely super valuable for me long term.
Yeah, right on. User-centric design. That's a good way to think about it. And also just sort of how to explain code, you know, to folks who aren't coders. You know, I know the folks in Long Island, they do a great job running our program called Code Coaching Plus, which is actually a way to get kids to be able to explain their code a little bit better, a little bit more of the social side. So I think that's important too. Mm-hmm. The other interesting failure you ran into is another huge challenge I know Zubair and Noreen and Jerry Lynn face all the time, which is getting people in the door, right? Whenever you own a business, you got to market, and get people in the door. So it's a big challenge. Cool. Thanks for that answer. Eva or Jeffrey, what do you guys got on your biggest failure? Either of you guys.
I guess I can start. I guess not as learnable, or I guess more on like a personal aspect compared to Austin's is, I'd say my first 2 years of high school, I was also similar to Eva. I was on like a 4-year research path in high school. Excuse me. But especially I think entering high school, I was very much had like a lot of expectations of like, what is the path to, I guess, like getting into a good school, since like, oh, like moving up from middle school to high school is like a big change, and it's like within 4 years you get to leave your parents, blah blah blah, and like those 4 years in high school is like what makes or breaks your like your college application. So I did high school research because that's like, oh, everyone in the high school research program goes to like amazing schools, and I was looking at like past projects of like what won, and I decided my first year to do an environmental science project because I've seen other projects like that win. And then second year, I did a behavioral science project because a lot of behavioral science projects won. There was like no real engineering or like hardware projects before, so that like I didn't even think of as a possibility. And I was kind of on that route. Like I enjoy doing the projects, but it wasn't something that I was super passionate about. And I feel like I wasted those first 2 years in high school research on those projects. Since like high school research kind of like takes over your entire life for the period of few months, and like going to competitions, presenting, spending like hours writing a speech, a board, and like the most we got was like an honorable mention or something. Then like in my junior and senior year, I did my 3D printing engineering project, which I like actually carried over from just a side like passion project that I've been working on in high school. And that was something that like I love doing. It was just like in my parents' basement tinkering with this like cheap open source 3D printer that I like got off a website. And it became a like very successful project. Like I was able to present it at the International Science and Engineering Fair, and just taking a more natural path of like things you care about and not necessarily focusing on like, what will this get you? It's more like, oh, like this is fun, explore your interests. And then of course, like I ended up going to a college I really enjoy, and like everything ended up being fine. I think that's like especially a really important lesson to like just impart on anyone worried about college, since I know on Long Island it is a lot of like parental pressure or pressure from teachers of like going to a good college. And like I know people who do things like exclusively for college, but I feel like especially in the later years of my high school career, it was like, do what you like, and naturally like you'll be able to build a good resume. And then even if there isn't opportunities for things for you to do, like forge your own path. That's like kind of what I did with TeenHacks LI, since like there's no hackathon on Long Island. So I'll create my own hackathon. And that just like entrepreneurial spirit, I think, is also like really important.
Yeah, that whole passion thing is amazing. That's right. Like the best way to learn is to be passionate about something, and that's how you can grow into it. Eva, sorry, before you go, or before you start, I just wanted to mention real quick. So Monica Grossman mentioned back to the Zoom that Jerry Lynn asked about, that her family uses House Party and Microsoft Teams. So those are two other fun ones. I hear House Party is a party. So I hear that's a fun one too. So sorry, Eva, go ahead.
Yeah, so before I go into my biggest failure, I want to first agree with Jeffrey. It's really important to do things that's not only, or it's just for this seems good on your resume. It's more important to be something you're actually passionate about. And with that passion in your heart, you can actually make some impact that benefits your community. So speaking of my failure, I will also like say something similar to Jeffrey. It's also like a bigger picture of my life. So I think 3-4 years ago, which is like a huge turning point of my life. So which my parents make a decision to immigrate to the US. So at that point, I was not so familiar with English. I was not familiar with the country at all and the people here. So I was completely lost when I stepped on this strange land, I guess. So during the summer, I actually got the opportunity to take the specialized high school admission test. And that's why I was able to get into Bronx Science to pursue what I passionate about in life, STEM. So it was a really, really hard year to actually get used to the environment. But like through the process, I actually understand one point is that we're essential to each other. So like, for example, not just speaking about how teachers in my school helped me, but also like, it's like the first day of my high school and I didn't know how to get back to my home. So my classmate actually keep me company and direct me to my home, even though she can got off the bus earlier. My bio teacher, he was really, really support my scientist dream, and he actually talked to me about the research program. He said you should give it a try. And actually, I wasn't able to get in the program at the first time, because my language score is not enough for the program. So what I did is I reached out to my guidance counselor, and she talked to the principal, and we are actually at the end figure out, and I was actually able to take the program. And then now I become the first finalist in 3 years in my school. So maybe no one will think about it 3 years ago, and no one will think about I can actually go to my dream school to study my dream career. So always give it a try.
Awesome. I was just going to say to everyone in our audience, the chat is open if there's questions that you want to pose to anyone. Also, the survey, the sharing the survey results. But Hansel, maybe there's one quick question before we take a look at the results that we had out there is, we have a student that's interested in learning Unity. So maybe you can talk about that in terms of what you think the path is in terms of learning that language.
Is that a question for me?
Yes, it is. Sorry.
It's
a Coder School. It's a Coder School question from a mom.
Okay. And how old is the child?
He's in 7th grade.
7th grade. So Unity tends to be one of the more complex sort of platforms to learn on. It's typically C#, I believe, is the language. While we do teach it a decent amount, I think it is because it is very engaging and looks amazing, but it is very difficult. So I've actually cautioned a lot of our coaches that we don't go overboard on teaching that too early. When we teach kids, we want to make sure that they're engaged and they actually understand, and that we don't, kind of jump too many spaces ahead. So my recommendation is always to start, at that age, is probably starting out a Python or a JavaScript, something that's typable and is something you can learn and be more engaged with. And once they are able to suck up a lot of the energy and the sort of the logic and all that of coding, then they can slowly move towards a Unity, which is quite advanced. Unity is what is used by professional coders to make, legitimate 3D games that they sell for $50, out in Amazon. So it is a very powerful engine. So it'll take time. I'm sure Jerry Lynn can show you guys that coder tree where, you guys have to grow a lot of roots. You have to learn a lot of the basics before you get up to the advanced stuff. So,
thanks, Hansel. So look at the audience. It's quite impressive, right? In terms of percentages. It's great.
Yeah.
I was thinking of one question that maybe I can just ask at this point is, one of the things that I was thinking about during the week leading up to this is people have different passions. It might not be engineering, it might not be computer science necessarily, but I know of a lot of people. So when I think about technology, it's pervasive throughout every single industry right now. So when I think about that, I think about the opportunities that lie ahead of everyone right now. There's the integration of arts and technology, medicine and technology. If you look at the startup companies, can you guys talk about that? Because what I think is really important is not everyone was on Earth to become an engineer, essentially. So what's your thoughts about marrying those anything with technology or computer science?
Yeah, I guess I can start with this one. I think it's like super important, especially like nowadays, that technology is just part of everything. Everything has some technical component to it. Basically, everything has a computer. Your fridge even has like a touch screen now. So I think it's super important to just have a fundamental understanding of how technology works, especially for the younger generation, since there is like, I guess like my like a lot of people my age like have a pretty good understanding of like how a PC works, how to like navigate a computer. But I know a lot of people who are younger, who are like my little brother who's 5. He like basically only interacts with an iPad. So it's like really important to get people to understand how the fundamentals work. And then there is like an entire industry of like technology management now. I know like at my school, we have the Wharton School of Business. They are an engineering students, but they are business students, and they are looking at ways of how to integrate technology into different facets of business. Like AI now is like a really important technology and is having a huge impact on different industries. I have a interview coming up with a like fashion consulting firm, so I've been reading up on fashion, and like in the fashion industry, AI has even had a huge impact on just different technologies of automating like supply chains, automating how like market analytics work, looking at even like apps of how to like shop and just like interact with customers and clients. So I think even if you don't necessarily love computer science, it is not necessarily the career field you have to go into, but just understanding basics is going to help you anywhere you go. I see someone asked me, why am I choosing to major in economics instead of engineering or computer science? I guess the first obvious question answer to that is I'm not in the engineering school. So I don't necessarily, I have the option to double major, but double major is very difficult. But I think I applied to most colleges as a into like the arts and science schools is because like I didn't necessarily know what I want to do with my life yet. In high school, like in addition to just computer science, I was involved with a lot of different things. What I usually say when explaining myself and like my motivation for what I do is I want to create the like biggest, most positive impact on the world where I can. I think computer science is a really great way to do that, but I'm also looking at other ways to do that through like politics, through economics, and looking at other systems of creating effective change in the world.
Right on. So guys, we have 4 minutes left. I'm going to jump in actually with a different question here, which I think everybody on the line might be antsy to hear the answer to. I know I am. So how did you get into UPenn, MIT, and Berkeley? Name one thing that got you guys in there. What's the most important thing that got you guys into such an awesome school? Who wants to go first?
Gotta think about this one.
Yeah, I need some tips for my
So
kids.
I think I'll take on that. So MIT is a really special school during the admission process. One thing they're doing is they're trying to interview as many people as possible. They're trying to interview everyone. And that's not every school like Ivy does. So there's one thing, one key to MIT, specific to MIT, is your personality, is your willingness to use technology to make the world a better place. Because when you think about it, you're attending best schools in the world. You are using all these resources from the public, but the society give you these much resources, then what you can give back to the society, and that is the key. And they can see from the MA students, they have the willingness, they have the ability, the capability to make a change, to learn new stuff. I think that's very important. And when they can see that potential, and you have like really good personality, you're a nice person, I think partially that's why I got to MIT. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm writing that one down. Cool.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
To add on to what Eva was saying, I think specifically in Berkeley's case, I think this question, Hansel, comes at a very timely occasion, because I think it was just yesterday they officially made the call that they're going to stop requiring the SAT and ACT
Oh,
requirements.
right.
Yeah.
Process, yes. So I think, and this is of course is an anecdotal. It's in Berkeley, it's in a couple others, but I think that's a general trend you're going to start to see the U.S. college application process, because it's come to a point now where they're not looking for strict test takers, they're not looking for cogs. What they're looking for is people who are passionate about something, and they're unapologetically passionate about whatever it is. They don't necessarily have a pick. It has to be this, or it has to be computer science, or it has to be biology. It's whatever you're interested in. And I think if you look towards like the Berkeley application process, it's revolved around these personal insight questions, and they're just that, they're personal insights. They want to really like pick your brain and really find out what are you interested in. So I think especially as you see this departure from the SATs and the ACTs, they want to see diverse students. And I think like if you look to my case, I think I guess definitely what helped me is it wasn't necessarily just the coding club. It was being a varsity athlete and being a debate captain. I think definitely helps to show that you're a very round individual. I think anyone out there who's approaching that common application process, don't feel like you have to conform to what you think is supposed to be right. Like when you get to that extracurricular section, if you're babysitting, you start a babysitting business, if that is, and that's something that's really important to you, show that's important to you. They want to see what you care about, not what they're expecting to see. So I think in the case of Berkeley or whatever it is, just 100% be unapologetically passionate about what you care about. And I think that'll put you, in the best place possible.
Passion, right on, right on. Jeffrey, any good words for Upenn?
Yeah, I think definitely echoing that sentiment of like follow your passions. For me, like I think like I'm just kind of crazy in the fact that I was involved with like a million things in high school. Like every single day of the week, I had a different club that I was a part of, and like I guess this is more specific to my high school, but I feel like a lot of people in my high school weren't necessarily passionate about everything they did, but I was really passionate about everything I did. So I ended up like being a leader in a lot of those clubs, starting other things as well. I know like at Penn, I didn't apply as a computer science major. I applied as actually a political science major. And I've spent like 2-3 summers like working in political offices, campaigning, doing things that aren't just one path, but exploring all your interests and not just like kind of like, oh, like this is something I might like I'm kind of interested in and just like dipping your toes in, but like going like full force into diving into that world, getting to know it and seeing what it's all about. And I think that's something that a lot of high school students can have a lot of fun doing. Since you're still young, you can explore what you want to do. As soon as you enter college, you got to start thinking about major, and then adulthood becomes way too real. So I think for like any middle and high school students, that's like explore your passions, do what you love, and like dive deep into your passions. Don't just think of them as something that's like in addition to school, since to be honest, like throughout high school, my clubs were my life. Like my grades weren't the best, but it was more like I cared more about school than I cared more about my extracurriculars than I cared about my academics.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe that's not the best message for all the kids, but maybe about the both. But the message of passion, I think, is a great one to end on. It is the hour is up. Thank you, everybody, for being on. I don't know if Jerry Lynn or Zubair, did you guys have anything to wrap up with? I think we're at the end of the hour.
I did. So I would really like to thank Hansel. Thank you for making the time. I really, really appreciate it. TeenHacks, love you guys. Thank you. This was really, really great. And just on a personal note, the Kazis are fabulous. Noreen, Nisha, Zubair, you guys are awesome. Thank you for supporting this. And it's a pleasure. And we look forward to seeing you guys in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, Zubair, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, yeah, Jerry Lynn just alluded to, we're going to have our second session on June 5th. The other co-founder of TeenHacks LI will be joining us, Wesley, along with 2 other folks from TeenHacks. So I look forward to seeing all of you again. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Awesome.
Have a great holiday. Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
You.
See you soon.